Hi there. Well, it's 2 weeks now since I started having a look at using the Brucie bonus in the greyhound markets. Just to quickly recap, the Brucie bonus comes from the horse place markets, predicated on the idea that the front horses in the market don't all necessarily fill the places in the place market. So applying that to the greyhounds, I quickly set up a strategy to test over a period of time, with the only requirement being that the runners picked for the Dutch should make up a percentage book of less than 85%. So that's the only criteria I've set for this trial, and I've just let it run from the 25th of September. Now if I quickly jump to my records spreadsheet, let me just maximise that so we can see more of it. So we started off on the 25th, and you can see if I scroll down here, it's seen 286 or thereabouts, 283 qualifying races, and that's a graph of the cumulative total. So you can see it started off reasonably okay, dipped down again back to zero for a couple of days, and then we went on a nice run where it reached a peak of just over £300 based on a £25 stake. Fell away a little bit and then plateaued, and then last Friday, that's Friday the 6th, it just fell off a cliff and continued to do so for the next 3 days. So from here to there, that's a swing of £550, give or take. So clearly applying this strategy to every single race is not necessarily feasible. As you would expect, really, very few strategies can be applied to every single market in a particular sport. So what can we glean from that? A number of interesting things have come up from that, to be perfectly honest. If I switch to the summary tab, I've created a number of little summary tables, and there's more that can be done. But there was a few things that jumped out at me over the past 2 weeks. Keeping in mind that with 280 or so qualifying races, one can certainly argue that's not a big enough data set as yet, especially if you then start to try and filter down and hone in on areas of more interest. But a couple of things, you'll see this table here breaks it down a bit in terms of race type and the category, and there's a couple of areas that jump out at you. First of all, you've got this one at A10 where there's only 14 races, and there's a big profit on A10s, whereas you compare them with all the other A's, it's all a bit of a mishmash. Similar with some of the other categories, there's not enough races, qualifying races, to make any sensible analysis at all. But the ones that really jump out are the open races, class 1, 2 and 3. You can see they are all losers. You can see that one, there's only been 9 races in OR2, but a loss of getting on for £200. So that in itself is interesting. So there may be scope for, over a longer period of time, essentially filtering out such classes of races. And it's quite understandable with the open races in actual fact, because what you tend to find is there's usually a very short price favourite, and the second favourite is not that far behind, and all the rest are outliers. And so the benefit with that is that the book price is quite small, frequently down well below 60. And of course, if you have a successful place, the returns are so much greater. However, a successful place is few and far between, as you can probably guess simply by looking at these figures here. So there's certainly an argument to suggest that you don't do open races. That's certainly true. Other interesting things, I've done a breakdown of venues. These aren't all the venues available, but that's only the venues over the past fortnight. And again, there's not enough races at each of these venues to make any hard and fast decision. But there's a couple that have actually sort of jumped out at me. You'll see here Crayford is very successful with 37. That's the most races held at a particular venue over that fortnight. And then following not far behind is Hove, who have been hopeless, which is interesting enough. Now the question is, those losses there, how many of those are open races? So you can start to see just from these first two tables that there might be scope for actually diving deeper into the stats to see if open races at a particular venue, for example, are especially poor from this strategy point of view. The trouble with that is you need a heck of a lot more data to start filtering to that sort of level and pulling the information out. So you need time and you need a lot more data. But just another couple of interesting tables. I broke it down in terms of race distance. Again, for each individual distance, there isn't a huge amount of races involved, although the most one is that the 500, and you'll see races of 500 metres are running at a fairly substantial loss compared with everything else. The next one that tends to jump out would probably be this one here. So you'll see races between under 400 and this sort of level. It's fine. So the sort of mid-length races or shorter races look as if they could be quite successful, but having said that, there's fewer races of them to make that assessment, so I wouldn't necessarily go that way. And then one other interesting thing I thought is this table here. Of all the races, there's been 43 where there was only 4 runners, 142 where there was 5, and 98 where there was 6. Now before this weekend, which has been particularly bad as I mentioned earlier, it was only the 5 runner races that were at a loss, and this is a fairly typical figure. It was hovering around minus 220, minus 250. Whereas before this weekend, 6 runner races were actually also in profit by just under 200, which was quite interesting. It's only this weekend that they've collapsed as well. But the 4 runner races have been holding true all the while. And I think part of that is that although you've only got 2 dogs running on your behalf, the return should any of those dogs find a place is greater because you're using the same stake but it's spread across only 2 dogs rather than 3 or 4. And I think that's possibly why it's come up ahead. So that in itself may be an option. But again, same sort of thing. How many of those 5 runner races have been ORs and so on and so forth? So there's certainly still scope with the strategy, but you need a heck of a lot more data and you need to dive in and look for specific filtering and combining those filters to try and hone in on any one long-term pairing or multiple pairings. But certainly as they are, it's not necessarily something you would want to go down. One thing that you might want to consider is if I just switch this back to the strategy editor, the back price percentage, I've set it as less than 85. As I mentioned earlier, the OR races in particular tend to have a very short price favourite. So you may want to eliminate those races if they have a short price favourite, or alternatively specify another percentage book price. So for example, if I come in here, go to the conditions and put in market book price, but this time set it greater than let's say 70%. And of course we need to specify the indices, which would be 3 to E1. Yeah, we can just move that up beside the other one. So what we've got there is the strategy now would only work should the book price be between 70 and 85. So you'll get a reasonable return for those races that match that, but it will effectively eliminate those ones where there's a very short priced favourite and or relatively short priced second favourite. So that might be another option that you might want to go to. Of course that will then eliminate a lot of qualifying races, so you won't see as many qualifiers. But that's something else that you might like to play with. However, looking at this and all these options available, I just don't have the time to do it, to be perfectly honest. So I'm going to draw this trial to a conclusion here, and I'll leave it to those who are interested in dog racing to take it forward. I'm going to put this spreadsheet online for the rest of the month. So if you wish to download it and play around with it yourself, by all means do so. Come the end of the month, I'll probably delete it from my personal Google Drive account. The link will be in the description below. Okay, thanks very much guys. I shall speak to you later.